basic fundamentals of mindfulness and meditation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain about mindfulness, explain about meditation, how they fit together, give you an insight into all the other meditation styles, the ones that are relevant to mindfulness, explain what the relationship of mindfulness and meditation is, and then give you the things you need to do in order to get a sustainable meditation practice. That's my goal as a teacher, is only ever to help students find an independent practice that works for them, which is a combination of things that you've learned and the ability to learn more as you go along. We'll start off with mindfulness. There's a lot of stuff in the media about it, and people pop up and say it's just the present moment and all this kind of stuff, but they don't necessarily do a very good job of explaining it. There's an experience of the sensory present moment. The best way to explain, there's this guy called Daniel Everett who spent 30 years in the Amazon with a group called the Paraha people. They've got this word, and the word is ibipio. He was a linguist, and among other things he was studying their language. And they used it, and for years he thought it meant just. So if you say, "Where's George?" they'd say, "George has ibipio the jungle," because George has just gone into the jungle. So he thought it meant just. But on further analysis, he discovered what it meant was that someone or something had gone out of your perception. So if it was a monkey, and the monkey's calling, and then the monkey's too far away for you to hear it, the monkey has ibipioed the distance. So you've got this concept of this sensory bubble of the things you can see, hear, smell, touch and taste. And of course, as well as that, there's the inner experience. So whatever thoughts you're having, whatever emotions you have, that's all part of your present moment experience. That's a good way when you get an idea of this bubble. So for me right now, in that direction it goes over to that office there, and in this direction I can see there, and other than that it's just in the room. And then of course there's whatever's going on in my head, and however I feel, and whether I'm comfortable or tired or relaxed or warm or whatever it happens to be. When you're in a state where you're aware of this, that's mindfulness. There's studies that have theorised what this mindfulness thing is. The theory is that it's a way of monitoring your environment when you're in nature. Because we don't spend much time alone in a completely natural environment, and if we do, we're in one where there's no threats, we don't need to focus deeply on what's going on. But our ancestors would have, and so human beings are somewhere between 3 and 5 million years old. That's when we had the last common ancestor with the other primates. So over that 3 to 5 million years of evolution, almost all of it, except a tiny little blip at the end for some small part of humanity, has all been in nature. And so there's always been threats, and so there's always been focus on the present moment. And along comes the 21st century, and nothing's about the present moment. You wake up in the morning and then you've got a head full of things to do. There's the infinitely overflowing infinite task list, overflowing infinitely. You're on autopilot, you clean your teeth, you have a shower, you have breakfast, and somehow or another your body's got you to work while your mind's going 10 to the dozen, and then that happens during the day as well. You're in a meeting or something and you're experiencing death by PowerPoint and you've switched off. The thing is about all of this is it's not how we're designed to be. And so 2,500 years ago, India was actually quite a sophisticated civilization. They had town planning, they had administration, they had rulers, they had laws. It wasn't much different to now. It was an agricultural society. That's when meditation started. And I'm pretty confident that what it was a way of focusing that enabled people to retain something that they'd learned, because many of them would have come from very, very natural environments where they spend their time in the present moment, and then they're in an urban centre, and some of these urban centres are incredibly busy, And of course everybody's got jobs and there's money and there's loans, there's everything that's happening now. And this was a way to regain that sense of being here now without all of the stuff going on in your head. And it may have just started off with somebody sitting down in the roots of a tree and thinking, oh, I've got to clear my mind of all this nonsense. What I need to do is focus on something. And as that person would have an experience of mindfulness, they would be able to test which practices that they do, such as there's a thing called following the breath, which I'll teach you shortly, and that's designed to help you to be present. They would have had the ability to find the practices that worked to get them back into the state that they had experience of. And then that will have stayed in the culture in the East. And finally it's found its way into the UK, not before time, because we have such busy lives. Okay, so meditation is the practice, among other things. So let me just draw a big Venn diagram. There are lots of meditation practices. And there's a subset of them that are mindfulness meditation. And then there's other techniques that I teach, such as gratitude meditation, which is all about managing your emotions by using your positive emotions. And there are various different ways of doing mindfulness meditations. So if you go onto YouTube, all of the ones with 2 million hits plus, they're basically entertainment, leisure activities where they're getting you to visualise walking along a beach and you can hear the crashing surf. And if you look at the video, they've got a beach with no people on it and waving palm trees and all that kind of stuff. And that's entertainment. There's nothing wrong with it, so if you do that kind of meditation, that's fine, don't stop doing it. But basically what you're trying to do is distract your mind from the nonsense that's going on inside it, rather than train your mind to have an alternative to the nonsense. For the mindfulness meditations, there's two sorts. This one's called open awareness. And that's a bit like mindfulness itself. And there's a thing called focused attention. So open awareness is the experience of being here now. And the reason they call it open awareness, I don't know if you've noticed, the busier your mind gets, the more focused you get on one thing. The calmer your mind becomes, the more aware you become of everything around you. And that's because when your mind's really busily focused on something, let's say you're thinking something through, that's what you're seeing when people are wandering along the street with their mobile phone in their hand, crashing into street furniture. What they're doing is they're focusing on whatever the messages are there, and they've forgotten about everything that's going on around them. So they put their mobile away, and all of a sudden they're aware of the curb and the trees and the cars and stuff like that, thankfully. That experience of being aware of everything that's happening now, that is actually a meditation, and that's open awareness meditation. But to train ourselves to develop our mindfulness, we do the focused attention meditation, and that's following the breath. That can be a little bit frustrating, and my goal today is to explain to you and show you how you can practice it without the frustration, because the frustration's natural in our environment, largely because of the way we think about it. You've got three options with focused attention meditation. Option one is the breath or the body. Option two is a thing called a mantra, where you're repeating words. And option three is a mandala, and that's something you're focusing your attention on visually. So it can be anything. But if you go online and you search for mandala, you see incredibly intricate, detailed images that people produce. And they do that because that helps to clear their mind. So there's an element of meditation in doing things like that. It's not meditation, but there's an element of it. Okay, so out of these three sorts of focused attention, what focused attention is is we're focusing our attention on something and then the mind wanders and we return our attention to it. Mandalas are useful, but you have to have a mandala. After a while of meditating, you can actually meditate on anything. So I could focus my attention on the glasses and the bottles. When my mind wanders, I return my attention. It's like a pendulum experience. You're noticing something, mind wanders back to that thing. And that's the whole goal of it. The one that's most commonly taught is following the breath. There's a load of reasons for that. One is because it's neutral. You can't distinguish between good and bad breaths. The other is because it's persistent. It's always there. And if it's not, you won't notice. And it's portable. Wherever you go, the breath is. There's also a side effect, which is that it gets you connected to your body, so you become a little bit more aware of your physical sensations and, of course, emotions and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is following the breath, and I'm going to tell you two things that can really help you in benefiting from it, because most people find it tricky. The first thing is that if you make your intention for meditation an intention of becoming familiar with the mind, you can never go wrong. So it's a little bit like having a new neighbour. All the time you spend chatting to the new neighbour, listening to them tell you whatever, you don't care generally, but you're going to spend polite time listening to them because you want to get to know them, so that when things get tricky, you can guide them and manage them. You know how to approach them. You know, if like one of your friends has scratched their car when they parked, you know how to respond to the neighbour. So you want to be familiar with them, and that's it. It's just a matter of spending time with them. And once that's your intention, there's no such thing as a bad meditation. Because all the time you spend in the presence of the mind, aware of it, you're learning about it, you're getting familiar with it, and ultimately getting comfortable with it. So if you focus on being familiar with the mind, that's what a goal is. It can never go wrong. So it doesn't matter if your mind's busy, if you're stressed, if you're not stressed. You're having that cup of tea with a neighbour because despite the fact you're not really interested in what they've got to say, you know that you're learning a little bit more about them. So that's the intention of meditation. And the other thing is the relationship to the breath. What happens is we tend to try to make it a willpower-based, goal-oriented activity. Why? Because everything else is a willpower-based, goal-oriented activity. And you've been told that everything, exercise, dieting, studying, personal development, is all goal-oriented and willpower. This is the opposite. The more you apply goals and willpower, the less use it is in meditation. Because you're going to try to push the mind to do things, and it will push back. Think about when you go to bed early, you want to get to sleep because you've got to get up early in the morning. What happens? The more important it is you get a decent night's sleep, because you've got a big day tomorrow, you're going to present, you'll end up with half an hour's sleep. And the more you try to get sleep, the less you'll never push the mind, it'll push back. It'll either push back here, it'll push back somewhere else. The relationship to the breath is a soft one. Your intention's to spend time in the presence of the mind, and the relationship to the breath is like you're sitting on a busy beach and you just happen to want to notice the waves. Mind keeps wandering everywhere, and we just bring our attention back to the waves. Now, I know that's a lot of information, but what I'm going to do is show you how it works. We'll do some meditations. We'll do the following the breath meditation. I'll guide it from the perspective of making it a sustainable, comfortable, easy experience. Hopefully this will be a way of helping you find a practice that you'll be able to sustain. And if you can do it reasonably regularly and you come along here and they'll add to it, give you all sorts of alternatives. If you get yourselves comfortable, ideally you want your feet flat on the floor, your back as straight as is comfortable, elbows by the side, and tip your chin up so that your skull is balanced on the spine. So we're balancing the straight back on the pelvis. And because we get the balance right, then we're not using any muscles to keep us straight. With the elbows by the side, we're not pulling the body forward, because if we move our hands forward, we tend to lean forward, and then we're having to use all of these muscles down the back and sides of the neck and the shoulders and the lower back to adjust for that. So with arms by the side, with the spine straight, and your head, imagine it's like a balloon on the end of a stick. You've tied it to the end of a stick, and you just want to balance the balloon underneath the stick. That's what we're looking for. You can either close your eyes or look down past the tip of your nose. Find something just to fix your gaze on, and then half close your eyelids, just so you don't get distracted by anything that's going on around you. I'll guide this meditation, including focus on all of the areas that are relevant that I covered. Begin by noticing the feeling of sitting. Notice how you're getting pushed down into the chair and your feet being pushed into the floor. And all of the sensations that go up to make the experience of sitting, whether you're comfortable or uncomfortable, relaxed or tense, tired or alert, cool or warm. And then you become aware of the breath, moving the body constantly. Constant cycle of the breath. Ideally, we want to notice the breath at the point where it enters and leaves the nostrils. What we're doing there is just noticing the sensation, the feeling of the breath. And we also become aware of the coolness and warmth of the air as we breathe in and out. And you may be able to hear your breath. And then what will happen? In time the mind will wander, and all you do is gently return your attention to the breath. So noticing the breath, mind wanders, back to the breath. Repeat. That's following the breath. We'll practice this for the next few minutes. Cool breath in, warm breath out. Of course, thoughts will arise and the mind will wander. And when it does, our only response is just to return to the breath. So it doesn't matter how many times that happens. That's the actual purpose of the exercise. So whenever the mind wanders, just gently, patiently, compassionately return your attention to the breath. So remember the analogy. You're in a busy beach, the people running around and walking up and down and playing games, and the speed boats and the kite surfers and the jet skis and the swimmers. They're the thoughts, they're the distractions. And we just decided we want to notice the waves, and every so often we become distracted. Come back and notice the waves. Not an endurance exercise. It's not an act of will. All sorts of things going on in the mind. Sounds outside. This physical sensation of sitting. However you feel. And those are the distractions. When your mind gets drawn to them, all you do is come back and notice the breath. So again, noticing the feeling of sitting. Allowing yourselves to be aware of your feet on the ground, everything that's happening around you, how you feel, and then gently, in your very own time, return your attention to the room. So there's a general unsatisfactoriness to learning to meditate. Why do people learn to meditate? It's because they've got 1,000,001 things to do and they haven't got a single second for themselves, and it becomes overwhelming. That's one reason. Another is because the internal chatter, the place that the mind goes, is unhelpful, and you know it might be very, very busy. And so when you come along and you learn to meditate, the first thing we do is teach you a meditation, and you discover that the mind's even busier than you thought it was, and then we give you another thing to do. So it's unsatisfactory. It's kind of the opposite of what you want. So what we need to be able to do is to make it as soft and easy and positive an experience as possible, and get to the point, and there is a point, where it actually becomes a refuge from the busyness of the day and the stress of living in the 21st century. And so what I do is I teach a thing called gratitude meditation, and I want to teach you a gratitude meditation. It's a thing called a self-compassion meditation, and then once you've practiced it a little bit, then what we'll do is we'll discover how we can use it to help to make the following the breath a more positive experience. Let's say I've got a lot to worry about, and I sit down and I'm noticing my breath, and actually what happens is just the intensity of the worries becomes greater. I've got the opposite of what I want, so we need to be able to intervene in that. The gratitude meditation is a mantra, and all a mantra is, that's something that we say either verbally or in our minds while we're meditating. So if you've ever seen the Hare Krishna guys, their goal is to say Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama 5,000 times a day. So I believe when they go out and they dance around the West End, by the time they get back they've done their day's worth of chanting. We're not going to chant, don't worry. It's just as effective, in fact it's a lot more useful in a lot of ways, to repeat a mantra in your head. And one of the benefits of mantras is it does help to calm a busy mind, because you're hijacking the inner voice. And often it's the inner voice that's one of the noisiest parts of our inner experience. So we're both hijacking the inner voice, and what we're also going to do is soften the experience. The self-compassion mantra, what we do is we repeat it on the out-breath, on 3 separate out-breaths. So we're still focused on the breath throughout this. So it's still very much following the breath. The only difference is that on each out-breath we repeat a different line of the mantra. It's useful to breathe in fully without drawing in an incredibly deep breath, filling your lungs. And then when you breathe out, you say in your mind, may I be well. Next out-breath, may I be happy. Next out-breath, may I find peace of mind. And just repeating that. So we do this for 2 or 3 minutes. And what you're doing is when you breathe out, you're also relaxing. So we want to relax our eyes, jaw, shoulders, that kind of area. That's where we keep a lot of tension. So if you want to know whether somebody's stressed, you look to see if they're frowning or squinting or gritting their teeth, or whether their shoulders are pulled forward. All of that area, we relax it on the out-breath. Breathing in normally, breathing out, may I be well, may I be happy, may I find peace of mind. Just repeat that for a few minutes. May I be well, may I be happy, may I find peace of mind. I'll just begin this and I'll guide you into it. So same thing, noticing the feeling of sitting, This is a thing called grounding. Comfort's important, so get yourself comfortable, that's the main thing. After that comes the straight back and your chin up, but you'll be a lot more comfortable with your skull balanced on top of your spine and your elbows by the side. And then you're noticing the breath. If you place your tongue up against the back of your top teeth, provided you don't have a cold, then you'll notice that you naturally breathe in and out through the nostrils. You notice that cool cleansing in-breath, and then as you breathe out, may I be well, may I be happy, may I find peace of mind. And you can notice that there's a relaxing sensation at the end of each of the out-breaths. May I be well, and then notice the feeling, ideally at the point where the chest and the belly meet, just the rib cage and the belly. May I be well, may I be happy, may I find peace of mind. Okay, so now return back to just noticing the breath. So this time what we're going to do is, if the mind wanders, or if we discover that the thoughts are frustratingly busy, or the thoughts and emotions are uncomfortable, what we do is repeat the self-compassion mantra. So say I'm sitting quietly, I'm noticing the breath, I discover that my mind's wandered. What I do is I repeat the self-compassion mantra on 3 separate out-breaths. May I be well, may I be happy, may I find peace of mind. And then I go back to noticing the breath. Same thing if the mind's frustratingly busy, or if there's any unsatisfactoriness. Do the self-compassion mantra, return to the breath. So this is following the breath, but with the self-compassion mantra. Notice the breath, mind wanders, self-compassion mantra, back to the breath, repeat. This is following the breath with self-compassion. So now just go back to following the breath again. All you're doing is noticing the breath, mind wanders, return your attention to the breath again. So what I'm going to do now is what's called a full grounding. It's all the elements of our present moment experience, everything that goes to make up being here now. And we start by noticing the feeling of being pushed into the ground, the sensation of the feet on the floor, the feeling of being pushed down into the chair. And then notice your inner state, how you feel. Are you cool or warm? Which part of the body's warm? Which part of the body's cool? Are you comfortable or uncomfortable? Is there any discomfort? Notice you can move your attention from the place where there's discomfort to a place where there's comfort. You can also move to become more comfortable. Are you tired or alert? Are you relaxed or tense? So check in with the shoulders, the eyes, the face, the jaw, the cheeks. Placing your tongue gently up against the sharp part of the teeth. Breathing in normally, breathing out, relaxing the eyes, the jaw and the shoulders. So you're using the breath like a pump. The out breath is relaxing the eyes, the jaws and the shoulders. And then notice what you can feel. What are your hands touching? Hands in the lap or one hand in the other. And notice you can focus on the thing that you're feeling. And you can also notice that you can focus on the sensation of the hands. So there's both what the hands are feeling and what the hands feel, whether they're warm or cool, or there's tingling, or there's a sense of life in the hands. And there's whatever you can smell, whatever you can taste if you had a coffee or something to eat before you came into the room. And what you can hear, sound of people in the building, movements in the room, the sound of my voice. What you can see, even with the eyes closed, there's enough light for a sense of movement. And there's whatever thoughts are arising, whatever emotional state you have, whether it's happy or irritated or joyful or anxious or whatever it happens to be. It's just all part of the present moment. And notice how you're aware of where you are in the room, where the door is, and where your body is, where your hands are, where your feet and your legs are. And so again, just noticing the sensation of sitting and all of the elements that can make up the present moment. And in your very own time, gently return your attention to the room. Okay, so basically that's all of the approaches that make it a comfortable, easy experience. Once you manage to engage with meditation as a soft experience, it becomes a positive one, and then that engages the emotional brain, and then you've got motivation to do it. It's a refuge from the busyness of the mind and the stress in everybody's lives.